Welcome back for another episode of the Dope Stroke Podcast Show. Today, I'm joined once again, with the two mighty men, Chris Trott and Chris Ryan. And today, we're going to talk about everything that has changed the game of golf over the last however many years and decades. And to kick this off, I think it's pretty straightforward that we can talk about the Tiger effect. We can talk about social media. We can talk about live golf. There's a whole host of things we can talk about, but I want to start with social media. And I want to talk to you guys about whether that has had a positive or an impact, or a positive or a negative impact on the game of golf or not. Over to you, boys. What do you think?
Go on, Shotty. We're in social media, so we can't say no, can we?
Yeah, exactly. I think, look, at the end of the day, having seen it from a company's point of view and worked in sports marketing for as long as I have, and seen the power of the athletes and the trend through the white driver, those that remember that in the R11 and stuff, and then moving to different models and the domination of two-ball putter came out. That changed the equipment space for sure. Mallet putters, which we'll come to, but let's keep on social media for a minute. Seeing those waves change the game and then buying trends. And then all of a sudden, this whole emergence of just what started out, I think, as an educational platform, and some fantastic channels got into the space. The birth of Rick Shields through it is a great thing. Really like what he did at the start and still like what he does today. Same with Pete Finch, two of the original guys. Chrissy Ryan's channel coming out, good quality information. All that was positive. But then this next generation of people that have come into the YouTube space and had success doing it, pure influencers in the truest form. No real form of understanding of ball flight laws, no real form of understanding of the equipment business because they're just young, but an understanding of what they want to entertain in the space. That changed then marketing spend. So as much as I've talked about, white drivers and whatnot and the moves in the equipment world, then all of a sudden you had companies spending money on these individuals to impact the golf space who had no idea how to position the message. So you'd have the executive team at these companies putting the trust in these individuals, no idea. And I think a little bit of that has backfired, and we can dive into that if we really want to. But then, truth be told, I think the opportunity, and maybe I'm diving over my skis here, Bubsy, and you can touch on this now, but Bryson, I'll be honest, I've never watched a Break 50 in its entirety. Just not the sort of golf that I would consume. But a friend of mine who works closely with me mentioned about a piece that was in Break 50 at the weekend with the Gemini AI stuff. And I ended up watching 10 minutes of that with Steph Curry, and it's pretty good. Again, it's not what I would watch as a purist, because in its deepest, darkest form, I'm absolutely a purist, 100%. You guys know that. And the stuff like that's difficult for me to watch because I still like watching golf tournaments, and the Ryder Cup's brilliant, even though that's changed. We can talk on that. But I think that the YouTube space has changed a lot. And you look at someone like Bryson, that wouldn't exist without social media.
I think just to go one step back in order to take two steps forward, and this is where I think, Bubs, your view would be quite helpful. But I'm really keen to understand, what are we saying? What is our definition here of saying that we've changed the game? What moments have changed the game? Are we saying that's an impact on participation, public interest? Like, what are we saying is our actual defined pathway to say, yeah, that's had an impact on the game of golf?
Well, I think we obviously chat about our episodes and what we're going to talk about. And we kind of had the idea of talking about things in our sport that changed the game forever. Things that were milestone moments. And then I think we kind of decided on the fact that I would talk on what I think changed the coaching game forever. And there's certainly some big things over the years that I can touch on there, and we'll get into that. Then I thought we could touch on, from Trotty's side of things, from club fitting, what changed the game. Was it launch monitors? Was it adjustable heads? And then obviously you got Dazzler, the businessman there. So from a kind of business standpoint, what changed the game forever? And I think, golf is doing pretty well, right? It's a growing sport. And obviously you mentioned social media, but I think we just look at moments that were really pivotal in our sport and coming at it from our different viewpoints. And obviously your viewpoint is more the business side, Daryl. Trotty's mentioned social media. So I want to ask you, is it really social media that changed the game? Or is it the fact that we entered into an era where broadcasters, manufacturers, sponsors could actually measure what was being seen. Because prior to social media, there was no real way of being able to measure other than, this tournament had X number of views
Sales.
on TV. Everything now is, you can track it, can't you? And is that really the big game changer, that metric that you can track?
Well, I think the every origin of every moment that explodes into something positive or negative for any sport, game, industry, whatever, it'll be largely led by the one thing that has the most attention from the public. So if I look at my golfing lifetime, and I just put this into more of a timeline, so Tiger comes onto the scene. I would probably say that the one individual that's had the greatest impact on employment opportunities in the game of golf is Tiger Woods, because he comes on the scene. You've now got physios that are specialists in golf. Obviously, the psychological side has just sort of ramped up since the Tiger effect. The broadcast deals that have come into place, the amount of attention circling the game of golf and Tiger Woods, and how that's drawn everyone to the game. Whether that means more innovation in equipment, which I'm sure Trotty will touch on, all of these things. I would say that the Tiger effect is probably the one big effect that's had the biggest effect on all of our career paths. Me, certainly, I don't think my job would actually realistically exist pre-Tiger. Certainly not in the format that it is now. Obviously, there's all the technological waves, and like you said, the measurement of data and all of those things have definitely improved over time, and it'll improve again in the next 20 years. So I would say that in my lifetime of golf, the key driver initially for me was probably Tiger. So it's then cascading into the next thing.
So hang on a minute, though. In honor of the name and the title of this podcast, let's try and come up with 5, and let's put an actual date on it. And I think you can pinpoint all of that Tiger timeline back to 1997 Masters. Boom. That Sunday when he won that Masters. Yep. That is moment number 1 that changed.
I think so.
Now, let's be honest as well, perhaps more modern day, because, and again, you get these people coming into the game now and they don't want to go back in time. And I think Bubsy mentioned it there. Let's just pick apart that. He mentioned about broadcasting, analytics, where you could measure success based on sales. TaylorMade crushed it with that white driver again, because visually it was very easy to see what it was. Same with the Odyssey 2 ball, visually very easy to see what it was. Market share went through the roof. Now we have QI35 that's selling off the charts, but some of the best players in the world aren't using it. But if you go to iconic moments and you have to pin it, then 1997 Masters is definitely one of them.
Yeah, it has to be. I mean, you look about it from a tour perspective, the knowledge on coaching, everything just seems to have exploded not long after that time. Now, granted, there was, like to Bubs' point, the tools to be able to measure these different things and software analytics. Like, I remember, what was it called now? V1 or something? The coaching program?
V1 still exists.
Does it? Okay, well, there you go. That's how much I know. All of these things have just sort of manifested over time. And now we have an abundance of data all around us. And obviously the next wave could be AI, but we haven't reached that part of the conversation yet. But for me, Tiger Woods, to answer your question, Bubs, was the catalyst for everything that occurred afterwards. Broadcast deals, sponsorship money came up, participation levels grew slightly during that period as well. There was far more interest in golf from a broadcast perspective than any other time, certainly in my lifetime is the better way to say that.
So let me ask you this then, because I completely agree. The Tiger effect, I think Trotty's spot on. I think that 97 Masters, that iconic putt on the last with a jumper, that he had, that red jumper, iconic. And he did change the game from a business standpoint. It blew up, and we all, as Darrell's rightly said, we're probably all sitting here doing jobs that we potentially wouldn't do without Tiger. So does he blow up the game? This is a difficult question to answer. I appreciate that, Darrell. But does he blow up the game without it coinciding with social media? Because I think it's almost like this perfect storm, isn't it? You get this superstar that comes onto the scene, and then that's around about the time when Facebook, Instagram, YouTube started to become a thing. And I just wonder, would we still be sitting here saying that Tiger Woods gave us all jobs that we wouldn't have if it wasn't for social media being almost the accelerant in that process?
Well, I think social media is a massive, massive part of Tiger still today. I mean, the PIP program on the PJ Tour, he won it last year, barely played, didn't play. Still picked up a $10 million check for basically having the most amount of reach, engagement, et cetera, across social media. That's a pretty powerful platform for somebody that is not really on social media an awful lot and is not really competing. So for him
it didn't make a difference. It didn't make a difference. Look at Michael Jordan. Look at Pele. Look at Maradona.
It only amplifies them now. Yeah. You know, all social media is doing is increasing the length of time of them in the front page of the news. That's where social is really helping. But without social media, with social media, it wouldn't make a difference. Tiger Woods, he was that much of a I guess, an enigma, however you'd want to call him, arriving onto the scene, exploding in the way that he did, winning pretty much everything. What a time to be alive in terms of our lives at that time. But since then, there's obviously been events that have occurred. And Tiger, I think, has to be credited with a huge part of the interest in modern day professional golf. Because I think without Tiger, I don't know if the game would have been that exhilarating to follow over the past couple of decades. So you have to put it down. I mean, there's a good example, actually. So 23-24 season on the PGA Tour, Genesis Invitational. That tournament had 3.2 million views on CBS in the final round. Well, that's a 5% reduction from the year before because Tiger Woods pulled out of the event. So yeah, it still has an effect right now, the Tiger effect. And he's not dominant like he used to be because he's not playing, right? So amazing point in time, 1997, over the next decade of dominance from Tiger. And I would say that was the first big wave, which improved broadcast deals, sponsorships, like I say, brought more individual sponsorships to all of the other players as well. There was just a lot more interest in the broadcast. Advertising revenues went up. All of these things has had a huge effect on all of that. Employment for me is a big one. Like a lot of jobs have been created off the back of Tiger Woods. And I don't think that gets spoken about enough.
I think, though, like sports marketing changed. Two things here. And one, I'll do the second one. No, I should do the second one first. But Arnold Palmer, Mark McCormack, IMG. Like that changed everything.
That was the first big... Well, that was the first ever sports marketing arrangement that was beginning to take place. And obviously with Mark McCormack, he had Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, and who was the third? There was a third. I want to say it was Ben Hogan, but it was definitely the other. Yeah, maybe not.
You fact check that. There's no chance.
Yeah, I need to fact check that one. But I know that Arnold Palmer was the linchpin of all that. And he basically, with Mark McCormack, started sports marketing globally, which then obviously became applicable to every sport.
But you then, the second one I was going to mention, which I think deserves an honourable mention, and let's face it, we've still only got, the question will be, does McCormack and IMG get into the top 5 things? And we're going to have to summarise that at the end because I got 50 I could put in. But in terms of moments, that then brings you to John Daly and 91 PGA and the emergence of this guy who I think so many could connect with. And then sports marketing in turn with the Reebok pump and the Reebok across the front of the chest when he goes on and beats Costantino Rocca at the Open in 95. I think those moments for someone my age were as big as Tiger. For someone globally, no, different because of the whole Tiger situation, but they were the start. They deserve an honourable mention, 100%.
Yeah, I think maybe a mention.
Have it blazoned across your top like that. Yeah, but and then you can't look past Payne Stewart then as well. Honourable mention.
Yeah, I mean these are iconic moments. I think you can call them moments when you look back at the golfing kind of history or landscape, and you think about maybe that John Daly effect and maybe how long that iconic win affected the game for. And then you look at Tiger. I mean, Tiger was decades. I mean, it was. I mean, look, I agree, it's an honourable mention. But if we're looking at moments that changed the game, yeah, let's mention it. But I don't think it comes anywhere near to what Tiger did. From when we're coming out from this business kind of growth of the game, our sport as a whole. I mean, okay, I guess we're all. Well, certainly I'm guilty of thinking about this from the moment that I started watching golf, which was kind of 96, and it's pretty easy to sort of forget that golf existed before that. And to be honest, that stuff you just said about IMG, Arnold Palmer, that's news to me. I didn't know that, so I've learned something. But I don't think there are moments that we can pinpoint and say the game was changed forever because he had a logo on his top at the 18th.
I think, and we can only speak, well, I can only speak of my experience. I can't really speak of what happened before that. And I remember John Daly winning, and I was actually in the Kruger National Park on a family holiday when he ended up winning at the Open. And, but I think that those are so deeply entrenched to the game of golf, whereas I think Tiger Woods had a much greater impact on the game of golf by drawing in people that weren't necessarily golfers. And I think that is why I would say that they're two very, very different things. Great moments, as you say, Bubs, but I wouldn't. Honourable mention from me is probably a little strong, but I understand the sentiment.
Gary Player was the third one in that wheel for Mark McCormack, which, it makes total sense. And maybe that doesn't, I think that has a chance of being number 2 on the top 5. But I think if we look at moments that should be number 2, and this one's more for Bubsy, I think the 5 fundamentals, the book, surely has to be, I mean, that changed coaching forever.
I think look, I've got maybe 7 or 8 things here that I think dramatically changed the direction of coaching. And I actually think on this list, there's 2 or 3 of these which are things which change coaching, but not necessarily in a good way. And then I've got one highlight, which I think is the biggest change in coaching. So we'll come on to those in a moment, but I just want to quickly go back to Dazzler. Since the Tiger effects, is there anything else that you've kind of highlighted as something that's changed the game? And I'm kind of thinking a little bit of what Trotty said then about Tiger introducing people to the sport that weren't necessarily golfers. So things like Top Golf, is that something you can point as something that's changed the game? Or maybe the emergence of Live Golf? Can we look at that as a moment? Will we look at that as a moment in 20, 30, 40 years' time and go, that was a moment where the game got changed forever?
For the worse.
I think, Live Golf has definitely come in. It's changed the game, and that is 100% a very poignant time. I mean, they spent $5 billion already getting it off the ground. They've got like another 20 odd in reserves just specifically for the golf division. But I actually think that I wonder would probably be the better way to say that, if TGL might have a more lasting impact, because it's not the same type of golf experience. It's not on an 18-hole golf course. It's not ultimately a stroke play event. I know Liv's got its unique scoring system, but it's still 18 holes of golf in a conventional environment. Where I just wonder, is TGL going to be something that's going to draw in a different audience base, a different crowd? Are we going to see golf in the E-Games Olympics? Maybe, maybe not. I just think that might become something. And obviously, we happen to know quite a lot about it because of the Full Swing connection that we all have. And I think it could potentially be quite significant. I don't know yet. It's going to take a few years before that starts to manifest itself.
I just want to say, I think that's a fair point that you don't know yet. And I dived in there just as you said, Liv, and I said, for the worst. Can we just point out that it's way too early, and I think that TGL doesn't exist without Liv. So you could say then it's Liv. You know what I mean? You could be like, well, totally, it's Liv that's done this.
Yeah, no, you're probably right there. Yeah, Liv was the catalyst, wasn't it?
Liv is the catalyst. And I do wonder the second part on what I think might be interesting in the future. And I realize now, for a lot of traditionalists in the game, it's not an option. But I do wonder what the place of team golf is going to look like in the future. Because that's actually one side I quite like about Liv. I quite like the team dynamic and the way the teams operate. And obviously, I've been under the hood a lot, so I kind of understand how it all operates and works. And I really like it. But I also appreciate that for every one person that likes it, there's a whole bunch of people that don't like it. So it'll be interesting to see how the younger demographic take to the team environment of golf 10, 15 years from now, because that age group the younger age group is much bigger followers of Live Golf than the PGA Tour.
The best thing about Live for the business person is that you can support a team, and then you've got a number of players that will activate for you on site, or you can market those multiple characters over a period of time. So if a player gets injured, drops off the face of the map, struggles, it doesn't matter because you've got a team. So from a business point of view, I totally get it. You probably need to be doing business outside of North America, though, because I'm not sure if it quite has the same pull. Well, I know it doesn't, as the PGA Tour over here. But I think for me, and before we get on the teaching point, I would put LIV in the top 5 moments. Now, it's a very recent
100%.
one, but I think it goes in the top 5 moments.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think you're right. And not just because of LIV Tour, but the knock-on snowball effect that it will have on, already the emergence of TGL, already the PGA Tour changing signature events, more money. So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. If you're looking at moments in time, when that tour got announced, we will look back on that as a moment that changed the whole game forever, and you'll be able to see the kind of ripple effects of that going out over the next 10, 15 years for sure. So we've got 2 so far.
It kind of brings me... Yeah, 2 so far.
McCormack's life work just got brushed off. Sorry, Mr. McCormack. I thought it was really good.
Well, he predates us. No question, iconic.
And Ben Hogan's 5 lessons, that gets jibbed off too. I mean, I like that, lads. Obviously, I can't wait to see where we go with this coaching one.
Well, I do want to know where the coaching one goes, because I have to admit, I think I'm going to be on the similar camp here with Trotty, but then again, we were housemates and read all the same books. But 5 fundamentals and all that, like, where do you sit on this? What really was the innovative change in the world of coaching from your perspective, Bubs?
So, I mean, I'll read you through my list.
Clearly not that book.
Well, no. In short, I'll read you through my list.
Thanks.
And then you didn't read that book. Is that
I read the book?
You must have done.
No, it's not on the list.
I'll read you through my list. It was like, think about where that book was for its time, mate.
Well, yeah, that's true. For its time, it was definitely ahead of the curve, wasn't it? So I've done these in order, and I've tried to look. I've done a bit of research. I'm not around and alive for some of these, but in the 60s and 70s, the emergence of the PGA of America and the UK PGA. And that was the first time there was kind of a structured pathway to become a coach. So whether we think that was massively game-changing, I don't know, but it was certainly on that list of things that kind of shaped golf coaching for the future. Now, I have actually got a book on the list, number 2, 1969, The Golfing Machine. Now, I don't think that is something that really changed the game forever, but it's still referenced now. There's a lot of coaches out there who are still applying their trade with information that was in that book. It was incredibly detailed, quite scientific, definitely something that was new to the landscape of coaching. Then I've got number 3, which I really think is quite a big one, is Nick Faldo changing his golf swing with Leadbetter and then going on to win 6 majors. And I genuinely think that is a huge moment because I think it showed people,
just for the record,
that coaching could work. And I think it was a real kind of message to the world that, do you know what? Coaching works. Now, since then, the number of students I've had coming in to see me who are playing off 24-hour handicap, who've got family and kids and telling me they want to rebuild their swing like Faldo did, I'm not sure it was a great thing for them because it requires a lot of time and a lot of skill, a lot of effort, but I do think it was on that list. And then I've got Tiger for not the reasons that we've spoken about earlier, because that was more the business sense, but it really made certainly a tour coach who is working with PGA Tour players to realise that they need to be a bit more than just a swing coach. They need to be able to surround them with a physio, with a nutritionist, and kind of build that team out. Then I've got number 5 is the introduction of slow motion video. I think that was a big game changer, but I don't think that was necessarily a good thing. I think when we started to see videos, slow motion videos, it certainly bred a period of coaching which I think got a lot too technical. I think it focused a little bit too much on the golf swing and not so much on the results. And I think, probably going to regret saying this, but I think it gave a lot of poor, unskilled coaches an easy route to making a career. Because you could easily just
same as social media.
Yeah, you could just throw this swing up on a big screen in a studio. You could highlight the fact that, oh, look, your shaft angle here at this position is slightly flatter than what we see with Tigers. We're going to go and work on that. And the student was sold because they can see it and it was different to Tigers. And I think there was a period where coaches could coach very, very specifically on certain parts of the golfing, it sounded like a great message. It sold the message to the student, but I'm not sure we saw great results from that. So I don't think that was something that was a good thing. Then we've got things like the introduction of statistics. I'm talking more strokes gained. I think that was a huge one because that changed how, as coaches, we viewed the game. We realized that, you know what, that old saying, drive for show, putt for dough, was a load of crap. And actually driving was super important. We started to realize the importance of distance. The reason that Bryson won that US Open was basically through strokes gained. He did the math and realized that if he just hit it as hard as he could, it didn't really matter whether he was in the fairway or the rough. So I think strokes gained, statistics was really important. Then you got 3D force plates. Again, I think they really kind of changed how we coach. But landing on the big one, launch monitors. That is by far the one that changed the game forever, because we touched on it briefly last podcast. But the ball flight laws, we didn't understand them. We thought we did. You know, we read the book, Jacob's book, and thought we knew what governed the way the ball flew through the air. When launch monitors came out, we realized that we didn't really know what was going on. And I think that was when we really started to be able to coach the shot as opposed to the swing. And I think since then, we're in a much, much better place. So there's a few there, but I think if I had to pick one, which is the moment that changed golf coaching forever, I think it would be the introduction of launch monitors.
Do you think that the average Joe who plays a lot of golf, maybe plays every week or whatever, and goes for the practice session every couple of weeks, do you think that all of them should have a launch monitor?
I do. And I think, you know, you've got an incredible tool there, which, look, with anything, you know, it depends how you use it. It can be used for good, can be used for bad. If someone gets a launch monitor and uses it the wrong way, it can absolutely be detrimental to the game. But if used in the right way, it can absolutely be the best tool that they've ever laid their hands on to play better golf. You know, I mean, we all use launch monitors. We know how simple you can make using one. You know, you can just put that thing down behind you, the full swing kit. You can stick one number on there, whether it's carry distance, whether it's launch angle, or it's club speed, you know, and you can just work on that one number. There's, you know, I think going back to the point I made earlier, you know, when you think back in the day, right, when you gave a golf lesson as a coach and it was the student, it was a golf ball, and it was a range. You had to know your stuff, right? You had to be able to see that ball flying through the air, and you had to know what interventions to make, what to say to change that golfer's impact, to change the ball flight. There was a lot of skill there. And I think now, talking about what I said, you've got slow motion video, you've got force plates, you've got launch monitors. It's really easy, and I feel bad saying this, but it's really easy for poor coaches to make a living, because you can make yourself sound clever, you can make yourself look like you know what you're talking about, but is the golfer actually getting better? So all of these introduction of technologies can 100% make the golfer better, can make the coach better, but it's all about how you use them. And I think the great coaches of yesteryear and current day are using these different technologies to enhance what they do, not to coach for them. And I think that's the real message here. But yeah, if you're an amateur golfer, grabbing a launch monitor and using it in the right way is just going to unlock a different dimension for your practice, 100%.
Well said. Do you know that I had to Google who do you think proved it? So it's the D plane, which anyone out there, you can go and have a look at the D plane, but that is a combination of face, attack angle, etc., to create, and where that swing direction is going to create ball flight and how it starts. Who do you have responsible for coming up with the D plane theory? Any names?
Is that not Frederick?
Because I had one and I had the wrong name. I thought it was Frederick Tuxton too.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not. I thought it was. So we're not going to get it, are we? It's Dr. Theodore Jurgensen. He's probably a mate of Frederick Tuxton's. He would be the guy. And that would be launch monitors. And I think that makes... I think that you said it so well, there's a clear path for that being on the list of top 5 things to change the game, for sure.
Yeah.
Just for a little bit of clarity, if anyone...
Jude, can I just add here, Bobsy, a question though? Do you not think that I'm so thankful for this every day, that I learn how to be around golf, how to play golf, how to coach golf, and how to fit golf clubs without a launch monitor? I'm so thankful that I was able to do that, because I think that's made me a million times better now that I have a launch monitor.
100%. I think I said a moment ago, the best coaches, and I'm guessing the best fitters, are using these tools to enhance what they do. Now, it would be really easy for someone who's a bit younger than us to have, started their career in golf, just, having launch monitors, having slow motion video, having force plates, and not ever having to watch ball flight and listen for contact and listen and see toe strikes and see heel strikes and see these things live through your naked eye, and then have to sort of input those into your brain and try and come out with the sort of right solution. So I do think, I'm blessed that I got to coach with and without, and I do think it does make you a better coach. And I know some coaches now who have all this technology and will often just watch 5, 10, 15 shots without looking at any data, any video, any force plate stuff, just to sort of get back to the roots, obviously, of just look, let's keep it really simple. The ball's doing X, I've got to make it do Y. How do we do it? And then sometimes they'll use the launch monitor to just confirm the change that they're making are actually happening. But I do think, going back to your point, Trotter, I'm super glad that I was able to, experience that whole change of kind of non-technology into technology. I just want to say quickly before, if anybody's listening and they're not sure about what we're talking about here, Jorgensen, was that his name? Theodore Jorgensen. We were basically taught that if you imagine you've got a target, we'll call it a flag. Let's say you got an iron in your hand. We were always taught that the club path, so let's say the club path is to the right of the target, that would dictate where the ball started, and the club face would dictate where the ball finished. So if you could make contact with the club face pointing at the target, i.e. square, and the club path out to the right, we were told that the ball would start to the right and curve and finish on the target. And then the introduction of launch launchers blew that out the water, and we figured that wasn't really the case. So the ball, depending on the loft of the club, driver down to wedge is going to be different, but the ball starts 75, 80% based on where the club face is pointing. So wherever your club face is pointing is where the ball's going to start, not the path. And then it curves based on the relationship. So if you were wanting to hit a draw, your club path would need to be out to the right. That's still true, but the face would need to be close to that path, but still significantly open to the target. And that was the real breakthrough with the emergence of kind of D-plane and that kind of stuff. But that was for the coaching fraternity, whatever you want to call it out there, that was like a massive moment. And there was a lot of coaches who were slow to come around to that, let's say.
And just to add to that, the D-plane then talks about angle of attack, which is measured halfway down in your downswing through to impact. And if we go back in this podcast and reference The Golf Machine, which was Homer Kelly wrote that amazing, like, scientific book, as Bubsy mentioned. I own it. Very difficult to read, to be honest with you. That would not talk about, like, there were players coming out swinging it very much on that Golf Machine, Mac O'Grady method, who were very level or down on driver. One of the best drivers I've ever worked with, played in tournaments with him, never played in a group with him, but Garcia would be down slightly on driver. It's actually proven that it's not the most optimal way to hit modern day equipment. But if we go through time, and maybe this makes the list, persimmon into metal woods, players who struggled to adopt that and actually disappeared at that time. Now, there are other factors with their age and stuff, but the two that I did work with in an attempt to get them to capitalize on these clubs, because now when you went from a block of wood that needed a slight downward or zero attack angle for the ball they were using, which was the Blata, so golf ball could go in there with the emergence of Pro V1. That changed how the golf ball was. Now you had a club where the center of gravity could be controlled where it went in the head. We knew from the D-plane that you needed to hit more up on it, offset the center of gravity of the driver to be below the center of gravity of the golf ball to create a higher launch with less spin. Players that struggle to do that, because now the emphasis on hitting the center was reducing. In the modern day game, you don't need to hit the center with driver as much as you perhaps, it was a premium back in the day. Woosnam and Olazabal kind of drifted out of the game at that stage, who were cracking iron players because of the way they developed their swings. And now you had a game where you needed two swings, and it was proven based on the D-plane, based on the ball flight laws, based on the emergence of launch monitors, based on the changing of equipment. So all of these things got us to where we're at, which I think absolutely means that launch monitors do make number 3 on the list. I will say, and it was a point I wanted to come back to, that this is why I have a bit of a bugbear with club reviews and golf lessons and golf fittings happening inside. And it's why I like Simulator. I love TGL, by the way. I think it's brilliant for what it is for the game. But in terms of fitting golf lesson, unless you're having a controlled golf lesson in a controlled environment, which, by the way, we never have a controlled environment when we hit a golf shot. But you must always, for me, go outside for your fittings and your golf lesson. Now, if it's minus whatever and you've got to live somewhere that means you have an indoor lesson, there's a place for that. But as Bubsy was saying, every component needs to be added together to create a great golf coach. And I do think at times of struggle on golf coaching, if you can look at the ball flight and see the divot and try to, which divots can be misleading, but listen to the strike and try and figure out what the individual in front of you is capable of, then you can get back to basics and find your ground zero. But again, data, which maybe we put that in as number 4 and 5, we've got 2 left on this, gets the spot that then proves everything. But I think it's a good point to sort of get on equipment. I'm sure we could list the same things here as to what are iconic in the game that have changed them. But there are specific moments, and maybe we try and summarize it in one. Different materials, so getting rid of wood and going into metal. Then you could argue, well, getting rid of metal or changing metal, going to different forms, different versions of it, titanium coming out, then going to carbon. Then you could talk about the ERC driver from Callaway that had that spring effect in the face, that the governing bodies got hold of that and said, okay, now we've got to put a speed limit on this. You could talk about the governing body in R&A versus USGA and how they differ on certain things. And then the USGA overrules that. Then you could talk about the global handicap system and the GIN system, which I mean, I think is horrendous compared to the old school British system where actually a +2 was a freaking +2. Nowadays, anyone can be a +2. It's kind of strange. And then you could go on to talk about summarizing, because we could do whole podcasts on this, peripheral weighting irons. So the ping stuff really, where the weight was pushed to the edges, the perimeters of the clubs in order to create more forgiving, higher MOI, ping answer putter, 2-ball mallet putter. And I think you almost summarize these things to go, I think the mallet emergence was huge. I mean,
When was that then? What was that?
Top
What
50.
year was that?
Well, mallets were out, weren't they, with the Zebra? The Ram Zebra was the first iconic one that came out. Nicky Price. Then the Bobby Grace was out with Nicky Price. But these mallet putters, having gone to like the golf history museums, they were out back in the day, way back for sure. But you know, the Zebra for me was the first one that you would know. But again, marketing and TV was making more of a deal of it. Obviously, loads of guys used that, from Ray Floyd, Nicky Price, but the toe hang was a bit of a thing that didn't really work for them. And then I think that the one that really, really got it over the line was, it's just got to be 2-ball, hasn't it? I mean, you can't. I never really used a 2-ball because I found out that I preferred a line on the top, but those circle dots on the top were just phenomenal and potentially changed the game forever, for sure. I think that mallet putters needs to go in there as something, for me, that changes it. And then I almost think you could talk about, do we put on, and maybe there's other things, but do we put on the changing of materials of drivers? And then if so, what one changed the game? Because that could almost come down to launch monitors too.
Yeah. I mean, did you guys start with Persimmon? Because I didn't. I just missed it. My first driver was it wasn't titanium, but it was metal. I missed that there were still Persimmon drivers in the shops, but I kind of joined the game when it was just at that tipping point. What about you?
I was the same. I went into a Northwestern 2-wood that was cut down and had a swing weight of about E6. Freaking awesome. Went 100 yards. If you ripped it with a flying lady, you could just about get it past the ditch at Old Padeswood, par 5 on the left there.
I remember my old man buying me, this might have been my second driver, so I started out with like a real cut down, that sort of iconic TaylorMade original one, and I had that for about a year, and then my dad went to some knockoff shop and bought me a Big Brother Titanium driver, 10.5 degrees. Used to rip that baby a solid 120 yards on the carry. Yeah, let's go.
Still do.
So, Chossie,
I've gained a good
talking
20 yards
from
since then.
you've obviously touched on like equipment as a whole there, but speaking from what you kind of done for the last couple of decades, which is more club fitting, what's the biggest moment? Because I would say from an average
It's
punter
easy.
just
We've already
out
got it
there
on the
playing
list.
golf, is it? Because I remember when we would started fitting at the Belfry, so we're talking early 2000s, and you'd get someone coming in and you'd be like, right, okay, yeah, I think you need this 9-degree head, and I think that shaft would be great for you, but you can't try it because we haven't got it. So was it the emergence of the screw-in heads that made it to the point where if you had that shaft in stock, they could try that shaft in any head, left-handed, right-handed? So in terms of from a fitting perspective, was that the moment or was it something else?
I think from terms of a fitting perspective, when I started on tour, you would just look at Wolflight and watch for the first bounce, and you'd set your eyes on the horizon and look at an apex, and you would be like, okay, that is apexing higher than the next one I'm going to give you. We're visually looking at face angle. Yeah, we're swing weighting, and we're measuring. We've been measuring loft and lie of woods ever since I got on tour. But it was getting on the tour and realizing that everything for a player relied on swing weight, and swing weight had been around since time began. You couldn't take a freaking glove off that truck without knowing the swing weight of the glove. It was stupid. That blew me away from tour to consumer. And then I remember R7 Quad came out, and you could move this weight, these movable weights around the head. And I remember taking it out to McGinley, and McGinley being like, why do I care about this? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I've been doing this for 10 years with lead tape and hot melt. And I'm like, it's not really for you though, is it? It's for the consumer. He's like, yeah, whatever. Just dial it in, get me going. But I think we've already mentioned it, and it was launch monitors. To be able to quantify everything you were saying in a launch monitor changed the equipment landscape forever, which is why I keep coming back to, I think that the R&A and the USGA putting these limits on the game changed the game. Don't know whether it makes a list like this, because again, I'm still only really committed to Tiger, Live, and launch monitors. But I do think mallet putters, I do think that just the way that you can get the ball speed off of, which then brings you back to, okay, well, how do you finite this to have one person on it? And I think it's got to be Carsten Solheim, right? I think he did so much for equipment. I think obviously Eli Callaway was massive, but if you've got to put a name on equipment, it's Carsten Solheim. It has to be. And just everything he did with Ping, he's Mr. Ping for those that don't know.
Yeah. And arguably, the legacy as a family still continues to this day. So it's a pretty big effect from one direct individual person.
But he did it. He did it for the Solheim Cup. Now is basically the Ladies Ryder Cup. He was so ahead of his time that he did it for everyone in the game. And like even Ping equipment now, if you look at it for the kids, they're in that. The simplistic color coding system. I'll be honest, if I fit people and I get an absolute beginner who's looking for me to change their life and they can't put bat on ball, I'm still going to the static system for Ping. 100%. If I get a guy in who's 6'5", I'm still starting on the static system for Ping. I'm referencing it somewhere in that fitting. So I guess I'm coming to my own answer here. I would put Carsten Solheim down as, and that would only be the second name on this list. You've got Tiger. I think he goes in as an absolute must mention because of what he's done for equipment and all of us.
I also think Tiger.
Okay. Well, before we put, go on, Chris.
I was just going to say, in terms of looking at the whole game as a whole and things that changed, it's kind of in the Tiger thing. But obviously, when he came out on tour, and then Nike signed him, that was a massive moment because that was almost the point in time where people stopped wearing the Pringle Man on their jumper and they stopped wearing diamonds on their jumper and they were able to wear like half decent stuff. And like you do think of like golf fashion as being like Tiger was that changing point, you know? There was a lot of golf companies who were just making golf clothes who struggled. I mean, I've said this before, but when I started playing golf, kind of before the Tiger era, I would not get out the car on the way to the golf course because I was wearing my stylo shoes, the little flap over there, my diamond jumper on. And if we stopped at the garage, my dad was like, right, go and get a paper. I was like, not a chance. And obviously when Nike came into golf and they started to kick Tiger out in his iconic shirts, I think the whole kind of fashion landscape changed a little bit. And it kind of made golf a little bit cooler. I know other people jumped on the bandwagon as well, but that was kind of Nike, wasn't it? And in association with Tiger.
I do. Yeah, I do echo that a little bit because I think it's almost that's expanded at quite a rate as well. Because as social media's come around and there's been more content creators and then they have different types of style and a different approach to how they showcase their content through social media, that's then developed almost an underground type of vibe when it comes to golf fashion. And I'm thinking about the likes of Malbon, for example. But if you go back to 23, golf apparel sales grew year on year 23% that year. So that's a big volume of golf fashion that is now cascading itself or overflowing the glass, should we say, into an everyday lifestyle look. I can't remember where I was the other day, and somebody was walking down the road wearing a Sunday Red Tiger branded hoodie. But he was dressed appropriately for where he was at. He didn't look like he was going to go, on the first tee. So it was very different to my heyday wearing Nike shoes without spikes on in a nightclub. Very different to those times. But ultimately, fashion and social media, I think, does go hand in hand a little bit as to how that's emerged.
Yeah, I mean, I saw you open the box
think you
this
could,
week, didn't you?
I do think
original. That stuff was awesome. That wouldn't have been around 10 years ago, would it?
But I do think you boys are overlooking there's a image, I'm looking at it now, shame I can't share it, and we talk about style and golf. 1966 Masters Tournament, Hogan,
is this the one with Arnold
Palmer,
with
the two
that's an iconic
navy
one.
cardies on, both got a cigarette in their hand, white polo, yellow polo. That is filth. I mean, so you sit here and talk about, fashion and Tiger. I'm sorry, but those boys looked different.
Well, golf and fashion have always been intrinsically linked. There's a fashion specifically related to golf. It's just evolved a lot more to become more. It's spilled out from the golf course into everyday life, I would say, relatively recently. But golf fashion's always. I mean, look at Lyle & Scott. So Lyle & Scott's massive brand. They started out making bras and they ended up making golf clothes. That's kind of how the origins of that company began. So there was a time well before we were both born where, golf fashion was a really cool thing. And then it seemed to decline and just go into this sort of era of horrificness. And I would say over the last couple of decades, it's steadily improved. And I think today, I quite like a lot of the golf fashion that I see, even some of the quirky stuff I see out there. I go, yeah, that's pretty cool. I quite like that. Would I wear it? Maybe not, but I still like it. It's definitely changed.
Totally.
So how many have we got locked in?
I mean, that for me is the iconic image.
So if we go for 5, we're locking in 5. How many have we got?
We've only got 4. We've got Tiger, we've got Liv, we've got Launch Monitors, and we've got Carsten Solheim. So we've got room for one more.
Well, I think social media has to be on there because of the rise of influencers and content creators covering it through online. I think that's had a big effect on the game of golf. No matter how you look at it, look at Good today. I saw an announcement out today. They've now got a PGA Tour event that they connected to. I just think that that where these professional golf tours were 10, 20 years ago and how they used to just be so focused solely on the individual professional golfer, the rise of the influencer space has made it so much more competitive for people's attention that the tours now have to include influencers as part of their marketing message to drive the eyeballs, which is why you see some of these key guys, pitch up at the Pro-Am at Wentworth and so on and so forth, because it drives awareness, it drives eyeballs, and that's what the broadcasts and the tours need. So I think that the influencer market has to go on the list because they have had a dramatic impact on the game. as a
I'm
whole.
not sure about that, because at the end of the day, if you go back in time, I passed an advert the other day, way back, California, Palmer Valley, which is of course about an hour from here, and there were all these celebrities at that event. So I would say that kind of attention has always been there. It's just that the people that like the AT&T Pro-Am, it's always been there. The Bob Hope has always been there. There's always been Clint Eastwood in golf. There's always been a connection.
Yeah,
Sean
but
Connery
those only made that one event popular, shall we say? Whereas now, you look at your guys' content that you guys create all the time. You get millions and millions of impressions and views every month. So when broadcasters are looking at that and comparing that to their channels, you guys are becoming competitive. You're a competitor to the PGA Tour because you are part of the attention draining span that detracts people away from watching the PGA Tour. Now, you could argue that there's a big market in terms of the second screen. So people watch PGA Tour golf, but they're also flicking through their phone and watching content. And I think that's really common. It certainly is in my household. So I can see, I just personally think that it's all additive to the game. And in some cases, it detracts from the game. So where there's more collaboration, where there's more cohesion amongst the governing bodies and some of the top level influencers, I think it can be a really powerful thing if done correctly and not sidelined. But that has had an impact on the game commercially, and where the financing of the world is, it's definitely changed it all. Like more and more company, look at TaylorMade's a great example. They've invested quite heavily in that space compared to other brands 10 years ago. They were really the first ones to kind of champion that influencer model and actually build out programs specifically dedicated to it. Adidas have a huge program related to that now. So when you look at it across the board, I think it's had a big effect on the game of golf because it's creating different revenue streams, creating different financial models. It's creating different avenues for companies to market their messages. So yeah, I
So
think
here's
it's
a
got to make the
question.
list. I can't believe it can't.
Here's a question for you, Darryl. Well, actually, I was going to say I think I know what your answer is, but I don't know what your answer is. Obviously, European Tour, it's always the European Tour. It's not the DP. Probably declining in terms of the names on it, the viewers watching it. And then you've got the emergence of, Good. You've got Grant, you've got Rick, you've got Pete. Can you see, fast forward a few years' time, maybe 5 years' time, can you see a point where potentially there are 4 or 5 tournaments hosted and playing in that are just creators like Grant, like Rick, like Pete, and they're starting to draw more attention, more views, more sponsorships than the DP World Tour?
Absolutely. It's already started. That wave's already begun. And the longer there's no deal between Live and PGA, the worse it's going to get for the European Tour, because European Tour will either be the beneficiary or the casualty. So depending on that dynamic and that relationship, the European Tour is less and less and less a viable sponsorship opportunity if you're a brand. That's the lens that I'm looking through, pretty close to the action. And I see it all the time, declining viewership numbers. You go to some of the tournaments, there's no fans there. It's no longer what it was. Your best 10 players every year. We mentioned Marco Penge last week. He's off to the PGA Tour next year. Like all of these players that are emerging as future stars are just moving. So the PGA Tour are depleted of a lot of their talent. Now, in one breath, I'm saying that. In another breath, I'm saying Tommy Fleetwood just won in India last week. But who's driving that? Because there's appearance fees that get paid. The title sponsor will make sure that the Rorys of the world, Fleetwood, Shane Lowry, etc., are playing in those tournaments because they know that's going to drive the eyeballs and that's going to drive up their sponsorship revenues. But the reality is the tour players are not going to play a 40 event schedule. They're just not going to do that. So there's too many tours. So you're ultimately going to have to choose one tour, PGA Tour. And the reason why some of these players are playing the European Tour, who are European, is because of the Ryder Cup. So can I see a time where we start to see more of these influencers have more involvement in the tour events? Absolutely. And Goodgood's announcement this morning is already the starting point of that. Do I think it'll ever replace anything when it comes to the majors and the significant tournaments, the ones that people's careers are ultimately measured against? No. I think they will stay. They might evolve slightly and then modify slightly, but they are out and out tournament professional tournaments, and they should be the ones that would win those events, if that makes sense. Does that more or less answer your question?
Yeah. It's interesting because you can see what's happened over the last few years, and you kind of roll that over the next few years, and it's the content creator, the social media personalities, if you like, it's just snowballing, isn't it? Each year they're getting more and more views, and you look at some of the views that Grant will get on a video, and then you marry that up against what you're just saying there, that a PGA Tour event gets like 3.5 million. It's fairly comparable, and it's crazy to think that essentially, I'm doing him a disservice here, but essentially a guy with a camera and a golf course can get as many views as a PGA Tour event that's steeped in history, that's got Tiger playing and it's got the world's best golfers playing. It's just a bizarre landscape, and I just wonder how that's going to go going forwards. I can see a time where there's 5-6 creator events, and they're televised, and you're watching Rick and you're watching Pete and you're watching Grant, and people will flock to them, and they're almost bigger than a Barracuda Championship in freaking Mexico where you don't know any players.
Yeah, and just to give you a bit of an idea, and granted, this is several years ago now, so this is now social media starting to come through the ranks. But when Torbjorn Olesen won the Dunhill Links Championship, I can't remember the exact year. I'm going to go as something like 2014 or 15. We might need to fact check that. But only 5,000 people were tuned in to the coverage to watch live the winning putt. 5,000 people to watch the winning putt. That is dreadful. Now, granted, European Tour, they get a lot of views because of highlight reels that go out internationally, and it goes out to the best part of 500 million homes globally. But ultimately, when it comes to the live broadcast, they're very, very disappointing. So when you then think about the rise of influencers that have, and I want to label this a bit more specifically, actually, influencers with skill, not influencers for the sake of having an audience. I'm talking about people that have, like you guys, Bubs, you're a professional golf coach. That's what you do. You're an expert in that field. Trotty, club fitting, expert in that field. I'm not talking about someone that is an amateur golfer that just happens to create funny content or meme style content and has a big audience. I'm talking about actual people with skill. I can see those kinds of people being very additive to what might come at future tour events, because they're providing an expert level perspective of their field of interest. Whereas I think other influencers don't have that. Like, follow me. Hey, look, I'm new into the game. I've been here for 6 months and I've got 400,000 followers, but actually I don't really know what I'm doing. Like, there's a lot of people like that out there, but I actually think that those are the ones that'll decline the quickest. The ones that'll have longevity in this space will be the ones with skill, which are guys like yourselves.
I think a couple of things to add here. So I was at an SCGA SoCal thing the other day, and what you're looking at is the coaches that can lend themselves to social media marketing are having the most success in terms of the broader picture, for sure. I think you're right. I think social media does get the 5th spot on this. I think it's really hard to take because we've not mentioned Seve and the impact he had on European golf.
Yeah.
Point number one.
Fair.
And then you could also maybe bring it down. I think your point about Olesen, he won in 2015. I Googled that, so good guess. But I think your point about Olesen is, I was watching Can I Break 50 with Donald Trump. 16 million views in a year. It lives on. And then it got me thinking, and this is controversial again, but it has to be mentioned because Seve has to be mentioned. And again, this has to be mentioned. The support that Trump has for the game of golf is massive in the States. Now, whatever, forget all the political views, but you've got a guy who's in a huge role in the globe, and is a big fan of golf and does a lot for golf, a lot for the PGA Tour, does a lot to do that video is massive for golf. So I've put social media as our 5th one, which means we've now got Tiger, Live, launch monitors, Carson Solheim, and social media. I think it's very forward thinking. I think it's the right one to put in if we're all in agreement. But I think to put a bow on this podcast, I'm going to ask you guys to list those 5 in importance to the game and see if we can agree on the 5. So again, we've got Tiger, we've got, in no particular order, Tiger, Liv, launch monitors, Carsten Solheim, and social media. Well, how would you put your 5 list? I bet we'll start at number 5, I guess, but I bet number 1 is the same for everyone.
Hang on, you've got to give me a few seconds to get this.
Just
Yeah.
and how are you defining this? Because some of this might not necessarily be positive for the game. Are you just saying
the biggest impact?
The biggest impact, positive. Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Oh Jesus, this is hard.
It is hard.
I've
got mine.
Okay.
This is interesting. Eh? You like what I've done?
I do think when we're listing our biggest impacts in the world of golf, we wanted 5, but I do think we need an honourable 6th, which is 2024, the emergence of the Dope Stroke Show podcast. Huge. It can't be underestimated.
Yeah.
Cannot be underestimated.
Important event in everybody's calendar every week, isn't it?
Of an impact we have had. I mean, I don't want to take loads of credit, but I think we should. I think we should take all the credit. All right, I've got my 5.
Okay. And on that, what's your 5th one? So the 5th is your least of the...
Yeah.
1 is the number 1. Yeah, okay.
Because I just think he obviously did some great things in golf clubs, but I feel like the way golf was going, we'd have got there anyway. Might have been a bit slower. Might have been someone else that got there first, but I think we'd have got there anyway.
Fake news. Daryl?
I actually went with launch monitors.
Jesus Christ.
I know.
News.
But my view on that is that it's been a steady transition to become more and more mainstream. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's what I think. I don't think it came on the scene and it was suddenly explosive worldwide.
Do you know what I'm feeling about this podcast? You can really see people's views, and this podcast really gets into, like, I've wanted to say a lot of stuff on this episode and I've held myself back. Liv is my number 5.
Do you know what? I think
I'm surprised, to be honest.
I think
you could pick my 5 for sure.
I think as we sit here right now, I don't disagree with that. But I do think in 25, 30 years, we'll look back and it'll be closer to the top.
So we are at least 30 years removed from Carsten Solheim, and you just put him as number 5. So you've just proven that your number 5 is a shit shout.
No, but I think with what he did, I think we'd have got there anyway. I don't think without Liv, it's not as if there was going to be another Liv. There's methods.
When the Dope Stroke podcast is dead and buried and gone, I'm going to just make one more episode on my own to revisit these number 5. And I guarantee you, we'll still be talking about Carsten Solheim in 30 years' time. I guarantee you. And we will maybe not be talking.
This podcast will not be dead and buried. When I'm gone, my twins are stepping in.
Number 4.
Number 4. I've got Liv as number 4.
Who'd you go for, Babs?
Liv.
Have you? I went with social media for number 4.
Okay, I'm not sure about my number 4, but I'm putting it in there just because of just pure saltiness, and I'm putting in social media as well.
Okay.
Saltiness. The influencer that doesn't like influencing.
I just like facts. You know what I mean? Like facts.
Yeah. I get you. All right, move on then. Number 3. Go on, Bubs.
So I put social as number 3. So I've basically just gone Liv, social. You guys have gone the other way around, I guess.
Yeah, I'm surprised at that. I think it could have gone in higher, but I get why I've done it. I'm surprised why you've put it there. My number 3 is launch monitors.
I definitely went with Liv there. Liv is my number 3. I think that'll be a disruptor in years to come, but who knows? We don't know at the moment. We're just guessing. It's our best guess.
Yeah, that was my debate. I think right now it's not higher, but I think it could be higher long term. So I think we can see where we're all going with number 1, but number 2 I've put as launch monitors.
Yeah, number 1's going to be the same for everyone. Number 2 launch. I went with Carsten Solheim for number 2.
Good man. I'm with you, McD. Change the whole game, Bubsy. You're like, he's crap, he is.
But I think we'd have got there anyway. It's not like It's not like there was another Tiger waiting to come into the scene and he just got beaten to. We'd have got there, It's like it's not as if I just think we'd someone else would have got there.
I can't wait until my beard goes white. I'm going to rock a Carson Solheim beard just because. But you're right, he's crappy.
I think
forget the pig answer that you used.
What's often not spoken about enough is how he's managed to obviously run that company so well, but also launch KFC as well and run the two side by side. That's quite impressive.
And hand it on to his family. I mean, that's proper success.
KFC.
So look, I mean, obviously with the conclusion, do we need to say
number one then? Easy.
It's unbelievable. We've all got the same answer, haven't we? I mean, it just makes me laugh that one individual can impact it so much, but it's just so true. And some people who aren't into golf don't get it, but it's crazy.
But I think that's the point, right? Because Tiger's had this effect on our lives because that was our probably most impressionable time in our lives. Whereas I think if you fast forward the clock 20 years from now, a lot of these guys who are kids now are being influenced by maybe Bryson's content, maybe by Live Golf, TGL, other things that are cropping up, left, right, and center. So their top five will be very different. Like Tiger might not even make their top five.
But what we have done in this podcast, though, we have mentioned Hogan, Palmer, Nicklaus, Player, McCormack. We've mentioned flipping Payne Stewart.
Yeah, but
we've mentioned John Daly. We've mentioned Homer Kelly. We've mentioned John Jacobs and the ball flight laws. Like
you're right. You are right. But we don't understand the impact that they had at that time, do we? We know that there were significant moments, but were they moments or were they long-lasting legacy? In many cases, long-lasting legacy. But we know that because we've trained in the game, right? We studied the game. That's how we operate. But we still don't realize that when Arnold Palmer came onto the scene and he was the main man across all sports in the US, is that comparable to the Tiger effect? We don't really know because we weren't there. Yeah. That's my point. We can only say things from the perspective and through the lens that we look at.
I think it's really hard to try and take yourself out of the current situation, but there's always a recency bias, isn't it? We've lived through the Tiger, so we're always a little bit more biased towards that. But I think it was more than just his golf. It was the way that he came out as an athlete. At that point, you didn't really need to be an athlete to play golf. You could be just a regular guy. He changed that. The distances he hit the ball changed the game. Even just the clothes he wore and the fact that Nike came in as a sports brand. I think there was just many things that he did, which is why I think he's top. But yeah, I do agree that if you lived through a Palmer or lived through a Nicklaus or lived through a Hogan, you're going to be maybe a little bit biased towards those. But I just think he had so much impact on and off the golf course that I think he just gave it a number one.
A Palmer and a Nicklaus and a Hogan got all that coverage without social media as well. That's worth pointing out. But then so did Tiger, I guess.
Yeah,
anyway,
true.
What turned out to be the back of a fag box idea actually was quite a decent podcast, Bubsy. Well,
interesting.
It was quite a serious one as well, wasn't it? Not a lot of banter, not many jokes. Quite serious, that was.
Well, Troy was on best behaviour because he's pissed off with his house at the moment.
We'll leave that for the next episode. Yeah. I'll give you an update that won't be an update. Quality.
Right.
Well done, boys.
Well, that wraps up another episode then, boys.
But let's see how this one goes down in the books of the Dope Stroke. Just absolute cosmic movement that we've got going on.
Cosmic.
Last, I was chatting to Lloyd earlier. The last 4 or 5 have done well.
Up the Reds.
Up the Reds. Well, the Reds could have been up yesterday. Let's not.
We'll end on that note. All the best. Yeah. Where can you find us, Dazzler? Give us the old usual spots.
All the usual places. Dope Stroke, Google it, type it into anything that you check out. You'll find us. See you then. See you next week.